Hello and welcome to another episode of Fikaba Vet Chat. I will take you today again up north and again up to Helsinki. As you might realize, sort of Finland is a country of a lot of innovation and of very inspirational people. And that's no difference with my interviewee today. She's not only a veterinary surgeon, she's also the director of the zoo in Helsinki. So hello and welcome to Sanna Helmstroem. Hi, Sanna.
Hi.
How is life in Helsinki at the moment?
I would say that after the previous 1.5 years, it's starting to get better. We had maybe too warm summer, but nice summer, and then we are going to autumn and hopefully back to more normal life.
Yeah. How is it? Is it pretty at the moment? Everything's open, or?
Most things are open at the moment, and we haven't had like really hard restrictions throughout we haven't had like total lockdown in Finland, but many places have been closed and limited number of guests, and of course that means that many restaurant and cultural events are struggling. But I don't know now. Again, there are more and more vaccinations, but also same time we have more and more cases at the moment. So now we are again waiting what government will say.
And out. It's just so uncertain. I mean, especially also with tourists. I don't know how is that at the moment with people coming to Finland. With the zoo is also depending on tourists. So do you see a big difference that there are far less tourists this season?
We definitely see difference. Our zoo, as most of the zoos are, the vast majority of the guests are local people. Zoos are many times like really visited by local visitors, but we are the biggest zoo in Finland and in Helsinki, so we also get tourists. And for 2 summers we haven't got them. And also in Finland, because there have been most of the cases have been in Helsinki, so even the people in Finland haven't traveled to Helsinki. So it's been like people have more traveled around the Finland, but not in the Helsinki area. Yeah.
I mean, that's a great thing with the Nordic countries. You just have the space. If you go to places like that, you don't have to crowd too much. Sort of, if you're on a hut or if you're outside in the countryside, that's the safest thing you can do, I think.
Yeah, and we have been practicing social distancing for 100 years already. So
yeah,
we are good at that.
Yes, yeah. No, I heard this comment before that sort of the people in Finland say adjusting to 2-meter difference is really difficult because they are more used to 10 to 15 meters, kilometers or something like that. No. So Sanna, you are both. You're a zoo director, but also a veterinary surgeon. So how did that sort of, to start with, come about? Veterinary medicine, was it always that what you wanted to do, or do you come from a veterinary family? How did that start with you?
I don't come from veterinary family, but that's something I always wanted to do. So I was a little kid when I just decided. I read the James Herriot, as many did, and then I decided that, that's what I want to do. I loved animals, and I also liked school very, very much. So I kind of realized that, that's the combination. I can study a whole lot and I can be with animals. And that never changed. I was really small and I never had any other plans.
Okay, no plan B. Yeah, but it worked out. It worked out for you. Well, you talk about James Herriot. That was one thing I treated myself to earlier this year. I went up to Yorkshire to the place where his practice was. I was at his doorsteps. I was standing in front of his practice and sort of looked out sort of at the places sort of when he went out of I'm sometimes thinking about sort of when you have veterinary surgery sort of and you're working in these places for 20, 30, 40 years, sort of when you step out of the building or get into the building in the morning, there's a certain sort of familiarity sort of scenery that you have. And if you read the books, it's nice to actually be in his footsteps and then to see, well, what would he have seen in the evening when he left his practice or in the morning when he got to his practice. So I found that very, very interesting. It's a very worthwhile trip, and they have a lovely museum, James Herriot Museum up there.
Okay.
So
did you get Yorkshire pudding?
I'm not when I was there, but I ate it before. Yeah. It's in any case, and the people are lovely. They're really nice. Sort of the people up in the north are far better communicators than they are possibly in the south of England, where I'm mainly working. So back to your studies. So veterinary medicine, yes. So you go through the course, and what makes you then go into zoo medicine? Why didn't you go into small animals? Why didn't you go into farming animals? How then that decision?
Okay, I have to say that I'm not zoo practitioner, so I didn't actually go into that field. I went to the vet school, and maybe it was more so that then I got interested in student union, and I was active in all kind of these social events and kind of student politics, and I got involved in all these kind of things. Then in our food hygiene professor, he was the type that he was willing to get all the students. He wanted to get the best ones, those that had best grades, but also those that were like most active in society. So, and I wasn't that the best grade student. I was the otherwise active one. And then he asked that, would you like to come to do the PhD? And I was like, well, I also say to students that it's good that just answer yes to everything. Not above your not to get a burnout, but be interested in everything.
Yeah.
I've been kind of that way. So that's how I ended up doing my PhD in food hygiene. I did do practice at like summer times and holidays, but mainly large animal practice. But then after I got my kids, I didn't have these holiday jobs anymore. And then I was in politics, in city politics. I was in city council and city board. So I was interested in like this society, and not only animals and veterinary medicine as such, but like overall more broad things. And then I was in, and then that's kind of how I ended up in a veterinary association. And then after I did my PhD, I already said that that's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I was working with genes, and I said that that's too small amount of substances. That I'm done. I'm done pipetting. That if I do research, I don't want to do some different field. But then there was an open position in Food Safety Authority. It was involved in Finnish Veterinary Act. So I was steering the Finnish veterinary field for a moment, and then kind of suddenly the position in the zoo was open. But I had been in the zoo board. I was chairing the zoo board. That was political position. So I was involved in the zoo from like political perspective, and then it was quite suddenly this position was open, but I thought that my job to choose the next one, but then the deputy mayor called me that, aren't you applying for the position? And then so that was kind of like that. I would say that there was also, I've been lucky also in the way that because I knew animals, but I also knew the administration, and because this was the city zoo at the moment, so they wanted to have somebody that knows also administration. They had a bad history of directors that were kind of highly respected biologists, but didn't know how to manage the administrative things. So that is kind of like I've done all kind of things, and that ended up to be a.
But you see, I think that's a nice thing with our profession. You can do so many different things. So it just opens the door to so many opportunities and different opportunities. And I mean, I met over the years so many vets that had started off first. I mean, the most common one is that somebody starts off in large animal practice and goes eventually into small animal practice. So this is a very common combination. Not quite so common that somebody goes from an urban environment, says, okay, I go on the countryside and I start now also doing sort of large animals or so. And the great thing is also, I mean, we do food, we do hygiene, we do genetics, we do administrative things, as official veterinarians, and good thing is also most vets sort of are, I think, also not bad in organizing things and getting things done, because during our studies we have to be organized to get through all this stuff. So you can't just sort of, I don't know, turn up at an exam or something like that without a preparation. And that often means that you have to really work towards this over a period of months or years to gather all the information, and so it's not something that necessarily, that's what I always think, requires a highly intelligent person. It's just somebody who is organized and you have a plan. So I think that is important. Anyway, so it's nice. So you pretty much tried everything, and then you landed in the zoo.
Yeah. And I have said that I always say that I think that I have the best job in the whole Finland. So so I know that that's not.
Well, don't say it too loud, because then the Finnish authorities might say, okay, if she sings like that, then we don't have to pay her any longer. So, or if you want to have a pay rise, that will be very difficult for you now to get that through.
Yeah.
See, so how does your day-to-day work look like? How much admin is there? Are you a lot out and about? So how does it work with the sort of veterinary care of the zoo animals? How much are you involved? How much are there other colleagues involved? How does it look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, that's that. Many ask me that. Do I take care of the animals here? And no, unfortunately not. We have now one full-time practitioner and 30 animal keepers, and we actually need another vet at the moment. But my work is mainly administrative. It's human resources, finances, building projects. All the contacts with the city and government, and this is highly international. The zoo world is we are really well connected with other zoos, so also relationships abroad. So actually I could mainly sit by computer, but not totally in my like basic work. But of course, because I need to see the people. That's the big part of the job, and of course I like to. I tend to walk around the zoo daily. Sometimes I'm too busy, but so I think that that's my job to know how it looks like here and how things are running, but it's not my daily job to like be involved in the practice work.
Yeah. But nevertheless, I mean, that is, if as with every company, if you really want to understand all the insights, you need to go down to the shop floor. You need to see sort of what the individual people say and think, and you need the issue at first. You need to see it at first sight. So if you realize, well, people are not happy with that, or there's a health issue or something like that, much easier if you see it for yourself and say, okay, well, how serious is that really? Yeah. Helsinki Zoo, obviously you will be part of some conservation project. What would you say are the sort of the highlights of the zoo? So if somebody would like to visit, so what would you say we are specifically good on this or that?
Maybe we are like traditionally we are most known about big cats. Helsinki Zoo was the first zoo to breed snow leopards, so that's kind of like traditionally we have.
You clearly in Finland have an advantage there, I think. Okay, you don't have the altitude as in the Himalayas, but when it comes to the temperatures, I think you can match.
And that might be, but actually, at the nowadays, the breeding big cats is no problem. Anybody can do it. But in 60s, it was a big thing to somebody managed to do it first time. So, and we have the speciality that all the big animals we have, they can tolerate the weather. So we don't have any animals that we have to take inside during the winter time. Except the tropical houses, so we have snakes and lizards and small animals like that. So that's like traditionally we are known, and we are also involved in conservation projects. Hopefully we will be reintroducing Amur leopards sometime, but it's been already 15 years that it's been the project going on, and now the COVID is slowing down again. But at the moment, I'm maybe most proud of the national species, the Finnish forest reindeer. There is the reintroduction project going on right at the moment. It's 7-year EU life-funded project, and we are reintroducing this Finnish breed back to the Finnish nature. So I do like that, because we are in Finland, that we are able to take care of our Finnish environment.
So how did you manage during the pandemic so far with the zoo? Because I mean, sort of at times the zoo is the funding of, there's always with zoos, funding is such a critical thing, and it depends so much on people coming to the zoo. If that doesn't happen, sort of, how did you manage? What was the situation in Helsinki?
We have managed quite well. I would say we have been closed for altogether 7 months during the pandemic, but luckily not the summer months. We have like really big difference. So most of the visitors come during the summer. So we were closed during the winter time, and that doesn't make such a big difference. Of course, it does make the difference that we don't have any income, but it's not like our annual budget it's a small number, and everybody have been able to work during this whole time, so we don't have to get rid of any people. And we have the main advantage was that, okay, we can't do this for a very long time, but at the moment we just stopped all the building projects, and that's how we only finished the ones that were already started, and we didn't start any new ones. So that's how we saved most of the money. Balance the budget.
Really.
That's how we did it. But of course, we can do it for 1.5 years, but we do need to do something like in the longer run. It doesn't work for a very long time. So and we've been able to contribute to conservation through pandemic, not as much as we have, but still, because and I would say that we are doing fine and we will get through this okay, but there are a whole lot of the conservation projects all around the world that are really in trouble because of the pandemic, and because they are so many of those are funded by the tourists coming in, and also that means that when there are tourists there are people. Now they bring money, and now they don't have the money, there are no people, there are all the poaching is going on. So I think that pandemic is terrible for the like global biodiversity, but we as a zoo, we are doing okay.
That's the thing. I mean, with the pandemic, it's not just about sort of a human health issue. We really need to look, I think, at all the holistic sort of aspect of this. Also, the impact of all the restrictions. So, as much as they save life, they might also then have other negative sort of impact on, for example, the conservation of animal species. On, as you said, poaching, for example, then traveling, sort of moving animals, for example, between centers of excellence or breeding projects, for example. That all costs money. If there's nobody going to the zoos or can't go to the zoos and there's no money around, then this comes all to a halt. So such a complex matter, actually. So,
but I think one thing that is good, maybe because like veterinarians have been talking about One Health for a long time, but now I think that okay, maybe now maybe more broad public understand what it means that we have the common health with the animals, nature, and human beings. So that's what I say. I would say that that's also advantage, but we have to, of course, maybe live differently.
It certainly highlights this connection. Does this automatically also mean that there is more of an interaction between the human medical profession and the veterinary profession? Not so sure. I mean, I think there's a good sort of examples where it's working, but there are also many examples where it wasn't working. I mean, one example was sort of we have a really good veterinary laboratory in Germany that is serving not only Germany, but serving all of Europe. And they work at the highest standards. For them, doing PCR COVID tests was a piece of cake to set up. It's just one further test for them. PCR technology, they're doing for years. It was so difficult for them initially to get the attention of the politicians that they could do the same work as the human laboratories, and they were struggling getting the capacities initially to do the testing, because I mean, before the vaccines were out, testing was all you could do to identify and then isolate the people. So it's a mixed batch, I would say. But going back to the zoo of the future, what do you think, sort of what, with the pandemic, and also, I mean, if we look at the environmental impact of traveling, so I'm not quite sure how realistic it is that everybody will be able to travel everywhere around the world to see animals in their natural environment. Possibly not possible, and also maybe not desirable. So where do you see sort of the role of zoos? They obviously have to compete also with the internet and everything. Where are we with the zoos in 20 and 50 years?
I think that thinking about like the global biodiversity, I think there is like a growing need for the zoos, but also growing need for the good zoos that really do the conservation work, which is more and more needed. And like unfortunately, I don't think that the situation will change very soon. But then thinking about how to get visitors, I also think that we are looking so much into the tablets and phones, and I can say it myself also that most of the time like looking at the some sort of screen. So the big advantage of the zoo is that there is something else to do than look into the screen. And also there it's like, okay, in many countries I would say that in Finland we actually go to forest, which I have realized now in global context, that not all the kids around the world, that the forest might be like totally a place that they have never visited. So in many countries which are like crowded and the big cities, the zoo might be like the really nature resource and the chance to see like live animals, live nature. And I think that it is different. It is different thing to see the animal alive than to look animal in the screen, although we all look all the cat videos in YouTube all the time.
That's true. I mean, it's said what you said sort of applies so much. I mean, when you go to London Zoo, one of the animals they display of London Zoo are cows, just normal Frisian cows, because a lot of intercity kids in London, they until they finally venture out sort of the city, so if they haven't seen a real live cow, for example, or goats or sheep, so it is not as sort of as natural or normal as one might think. Yeah. So I mean, also sort of when we talk about the environmental impact on and lifestyle, when I spoke to you the last time, I'd say I can't quite recall. Do you own a car, or because you said you're pretty much, I mean, in Helsinki that's probably easier to do. You try to go pretty much everywhere with your bicycle, or you walk.
Yeah, that's true. But actually, I for 15 years I didn't have a car. Now I do. But my son had a driver's license, so I bought car, because I think that when you get the license you have to drive. But so now for 15 years I didn't have. Now I ashamed I have now, but I don't. I still drive my bike, so I don't drive with car around. But it's also handy in Helsinki. It's much faster and nicer, and also a bit of exercise. And but I have to say that I try to do environmentally sustainable choices in my life, but I'm not no means perfect. But nowadays I rarely eat meat, so I eat much less meat, mainly vegetarian, not strictly vegetarian, but mainly. And now I'm really I'm looking through what I'm buying. I try to consume as like I try to consume less. So I follow. This kind of, I do a list and I also publish. But I try to buy only things that I need, and I also try to buy things that will last for years and not just for single time use. So I try to do like some, but like, okay, now I haven't flown to anywhere, but most certainly after COVID restrictions, I again travel around the world, mainly with work trips, but still. So I don't try to say that I'm any
perfect.
perfect.
No.
No.
But that's interesting that you say that sort of traveling and try to restrict it if possible, sort of mainly to work related sort of travel. I mean, if you have the opportunity, obviously, if you work in a factory, that's a little bit difficult. But that is what I also do. I'm talking about workations, so that if there are interesting places I want to go to see. On one hand, yes, I really ask myself, well, is this justifiable to go outside of Europe? But then also, if I go somewhere, I often think, well, maybe can I combine that with a longer stay, and then maybe, in my case, for example, with working in the places, you get a far more sort of in-depth feeling for the place, and by interacting with the people, it's a far more lasting experience, I find.
Yeah.
So
and I also think that it is really important that people travel around and see different places, see different people, because otherwise I would say that it's so. Now we have this growing nationalist movement, and I think that one thing to avoid it is to know different people around the world and realize different lifestyles, different cultural
understand each other.
So I wouldn't say that for humankind it wouldn't be good that if we would just stay everybody in our own villages.
Yeah. Well, it's so important to prevent future conflicts. The more we talk with each other, the more we understand each other, and also sort of each other's backgrounds and motivations, the less likely is it that we are at each other's throat. So it's so understandable.
Yeah, and our like these big problems are global and common for all of us. So like as we see the pandemic, it's not like any national issue; it's a global issue.
Exactly. So finally, I have to ask you, as I always do, sort of. About one of your pastimes. So if you told me once that you are walking the streets of Helsinki from A to Z, and I always when I speak to you, I want to know, okay, where are you at the moment? At what letter are you at the moment?
I'm in I.
I. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there a lot of streets with starting with I in the Finnish language?
That's moderate number of streets. I had with H there was whole lot. H there was it took over a year to walk the H streets. So, but I think that I will be done before the end of this year.
Okay. Good. That's pretty good. And I think your Rhodesian Ridgeback gets a lot of exercise out of it.
Yes, he's walking with me.
Excellent.
He will also know the whole city with me. And now we visit all the dog parks of the Helsinki because
all the dog parks. Oh,
yeah, because we go everywhere, so we also visit the dog parks.
Yeah. Well, we have to see. I'm working on it that I get an opportunity walking a street or two together with you at some point once we can travel again. Sanna, thank you so much for this interview. And if anyone would like to comment on this episode of Fikaba Vet Chat, please do so at vetchat@fikaba.org or send us a message on our social media outlets. And I hope to see you again for another episode of Fikaba Vet Chat soon. Thank you.